So this video lesson is what I call an introduction to triangles. Now I know that that name is probably not entirely true because it's a reasonable assumption I can make, and I think that you would agree that by the time you get to 6th grade you have seen triangles in math classes up to this point at some point before this. So rather than an introduction of triangles, really what this should be called is a quick review of what triangles are and how they're classified. So what we're going to do in this video lesson is we're going to do a quick review of angles and the types of angles that we see. Then we're going to go through the different types of triangles and how they are classified. And then finally to a few things that all triangles have in common that we're going to use in class and on the worksheets that you're working on tonight. And so the first thing that we're going to do is look at some angles. Remember in one of our previous video lessons we said that apart from the special types of angles, the right angles and the straight angles, there were two primary types that we had. We had acute angles with measures that are less than 90 degrees, meaning that they could fit inside the corner of a square because the corner of a square is 90 degrees. And we have angles that are greater than 90 degrees, which we call obtuse. And we have obtuse and acute angles all through the world in lots of different places, and we saw that in the previous video lesson. Well, one of the ways that triangles are classified is according to the types of angles that they have. And when classifying by their angles, sometimes it's enough to just see one of any particular type. And there are three main types of angles. Three main types of triangles, rather. There are obtuse triangles, there are right triangles, and there are acute triangles. Now, one of the things that's important here is to remember, as I'm sure you have heard before, that triangles in total have 180 degrees. And we won't go through and prove that in this class. And we are not. I can show you why all the triangles have 180 degrees if you are interested in it, but we'll wait for you to ask that in class. But they do have 180 degrees. And so that affects the way that triangles can be created. So in an obtuse triangle, at least one angle, or sorry, not at least, only one angle is obtuse. And only one angle can possibly be obtuse when you have a triangle. The same thing is true for a right triangle. There's one right angle in that triangle. And if it doesn't have a right angle or an obtuse angle, then we call it an acute triangle. So go ahead, pause the video, and write down these three types of triangles and the pictures that go with them that demonstrate the types of triangles we're talking about. So pause the video, write those down, and come back when you are ready to move on. So again, if you see an obtuse angle in a triangle or a right angle in a triangle, you can go ahead and classify it right away. If you see an acute angle in a triangle, you can only call it an acute triangle if all of the angles are acute. And that is the only way that acute triangles can happen. Now, there are other ways to classify triangles that I'm sure you've heard before, and that is according to their sides. Now, classifying triangles according to their angles and according to their sides are different classifications. We cannot use them interchangeably. And so there are three major types of triangles that are classified according to their sides, and I'm going to ask you to pause the video and write them down in turn. An equilateral triangle has three equal sides, and one of the ways that we show that sides are equal is by using these things that I call side marks to designate that the sides are the same. If sides have the same number of marks, and the same types of marks, then it is understood that those sides are congruent. So go ahead, pause the video, and write down this type of triangle. Pay attention to the spelling, please. So if three sides are equal, we call it equilateral. If only two sides are equal, then we call it isosceles. And here you can see that there's a different type of angle marks, side marks, but because the two marks are the same, it means that those two sides are the same. So go ahead and pause the video and write down this type of triangle too. Again, please pay attention to the spelling. And finally, if we've had three equal sides and then two equal sides, we could keep going to one equal side, but what that would essentially mean is that none of the sides are the same length, and we call those types of triangles scalene. Again, please pay attention to the spelling as you pause the video and write down this type of triangle too. And so when it comes to triangles, there are two things that every triangle has in common, whether it is obtuse, right, or acute, or whether it is equilateral, isosceles, or scalene. Two things that all triangles have in common. The first one is that they all have three sides. And because they have three sides, they also have three angles. In fact, that's where we get the name triangle, tri being three. The other thing that all triangles have in common is that the sum of their angle measures is 180 degrees. And as I said, we'll look a little bit more at that when we come into class tomorrow. But go ahead and pause the video before it ends and write down these two things that all triangles have in common, and then go ahead and work on the worksheet for the night.